GoForThe2.com in with the Week 4 college football predictions. Week number 3 did not disappoint. Great games on tap from start to finish. Top 25 battles. Penn State show that they're a contender in the Big Ten, knocking off Auburn as a 2.5-point road favorite. They dominated that effort, running on the front seven of the Tigers. Never looked back. Singleton with a big effort on the ground, over 300 yards of rushing offense for the Penn State and Nittany Lions. Bo Nix and Oregon ran all over BYU as a 3.5-point favorite, and the hits kept on coming in the late night action. We saw USC continue to roll, dominant effort in the Coliseum over Jake Haener and the Fresno State Bulldogs. They rolled. Haener did get injured in the middle part of that ball game. Did not matter. USC rolls to the 45-17 win in the Coliseum, and now they have a tough test in Corvallis this coming Saturday. 6.5-point road favorites over the Beavers. Let's not forget, Oregon State knocked off USC as an 11.5-point underdog last year in the Coliseum. If you want all the top 25 battles, including that matchup, tune into Carver and Lisi every Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, Sirius Channel 159. Carver and Lisi, Sirius Channel 159, Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight. Also, Sports Grid Radio and SportsGrid.com. Then on Saturday mornings, college football today. It's a 3-hour pregame kick, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Sirius Channel 159, Sirius Channel 159, Sports Grid TV. You can go to SportsGrid.com for the video angle, or Sirius Channel 159, Sports Grid Radio as well. We'll have you covered 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We give you best bets, prop picks, go through all the top 25 battles, try to cover as many games from the gambling perspective as we possibly can to get you prepped and ready for this Saturday's action. So tune in. Going to be about 6 or 7 picks on this video. A lot of underdogs. One of the picks starts on Friday night. Intriguing battle. I picked against Syracuse last week. Was dead wrong. Syracuse scores with about 7 seconds left. Schrader hits Arande Gadsden Jr. in the corner of the end zone. They pick up the victory 30-29 over Purdue. Aiden O'Connell and the crew just did not have enough offense to pull that ball game out. Got started slow. Charlie Jones stepped up with a dynamic effort, but it didn't matter. Syracuse pulls away and gets the cover as an underdog, at least at the start of the week. By game kick, they were about a 1.5, 2-point favorite in that matchup. Now, they come back home, Friday night action, ACC battle. They're already 1-0 in the ACC after knocking off Louisville week number 1, 31-7. Get a team in Virginia that struggled against Old Dominion. They trailed in that ball game and then picked up the victory 16-14 over ODU. Brennan Armstrong and the crew did gut out that win in Charlottesville. They have not looked good this year as a transition in terms of the offense from Tony Elliott to what they had last year in Bronco Mendenhall. Just to give you an idea, Virginia's averaging 236 passing yards per game right now, compared to last year where they were up in the area of about 392 yards per game. Compared to last year, they pounded the rock for only 123 yards on the ground. Now they're up to 176, so they're more balanced. They're trying to instill the same type of offensive attack that he ran in terms of Clemson with Jeff Scott, in terms of obviously Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, trying to have more balance. It's taking a little bit of a transition, and it's affecting the numbers for Brennan Armstrong. Just to give you a percentage in terms of where Brennan Armstrong sits, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, only completing about 56% of his passes, compared to last year, he was up in the area of about 65%. They go on the road. This is a tough environment in Syracuse, but I still think Virginia is a live dog in this ballgame. When you just look at Dino Babers and Syracuse as a whole, entering this year, they were 3-15 against ACC opponents. They get the Week 1 win over Louisville. Louisville struggling right now with Malik Cunningham. They're 1-2 overall. So they're just 4-15 in ACC play. I know it's a new year. I know it's a different team. Schrader has looked good. He's played very well within the system, completing 66% of his passes 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. They're pounding the rock for about a $1.64 on the ground with Sean Tucker. This offense is averaging around 260 passing yards per game and playing very well on the defensive side of the ball. But I still like the defense of Virginia here. Virginia only giving up about 190 passing yards to opposing offenses. They have 8 recorded sacks on the season through 3 games and playing very solid third down defense, holding opposing offenses to 32% on third down conversions. As good as Schrader's playing this year, I still think Brennan Armstrong is the better quarterback playing on the road. I think they open up the offense a little bit more. They might not win, but I do like Virginia to cover the 10-point number this Friday night over Syracuse. Another big battle takes place in the Big 12. We have Texas and Texas Tech. Texas has dominated the series in recent years. They've won 4 straight over the Red Raiders by an average margin of victory of 18.5 points per game. This offense is pounding the rock for a $1.70 on the ground with Bijan Robinson, holding opposing offenses to right in the area of about 130 yards per game. You look at the last 3 meetings, though, in Lubbock, very close ball games. The last 3 games have been won by Texas by an average margin of victory of 7.3 points per game. Hudson Card goes on to the road. This is an offense that's only averaging about 234 passing yards per game. They've struggled, have looked more consistent in the running game as opposed to the passing attack, and they're going right up into a very solid front 7 in Texas Tech. Texas Tech has only given up around 80 rushing yards to opposing offenses heading into this ball game. They're very active. They're athletic. They can run sideline to sideline. I think they're going to be in this ball game from start to finish. They played NC State tough on the defensive side of the ball. From a secondary perspective, you have Texas Tech holding opposing quarterbacks to only 52% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns allowed. I like that recipe coming back home to Lubbock. Now, Donovan Smith is a question mark. They pulled him with about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter on the road in Raleigh. Does he start? Doesn't he? I don't think it matters. Whoever starts at quarterback for Texas Tech, to me, can still lead this offense. They're still averaging around 372 passing yards per game, pounding the rock for 101 yards on the ground. But they do have 2 big play running backs. Roderick Thompson and Taj Brooks can both run the football and, more importantly, catch it out of the backfield. I think that's another key factor to create one-on-one mismatches with the Texas linebackers and nickelbacks. It could be a very close ball game. Keep in mind, Texas blew out Texas Tech last year in Austin, 70-35. I like the way Joey McGuire's coached his team. I think the defense for Texas Tech is going to be into this matchup. I like their secondary. I'm not sold on Hudson Card. Give me Texas Tech to bounce back in a big way. They're catching 4.5 points at home. I think they strike the upset over Texas in this ball game. Let's keep it in the Big 12. Another matchup. It's basically a toss-up. You have Baylor and Iowa State, similar teams. Baylor picked up this victory last year as a 6.5-point underdog, 31-29. They knocked off Texas State in dominating fashion. On the flip side, you had Iowa State that just dominated, I believe it was Miami in that ball game, or Ohio last week in dominating fashion, 43-10. Both defenses are only giving up around 25% in terms of third down conversions. When you look at Blake Shapen, he's a good quarterback, has played well in the system, averaging around over 234 passing yards per game. The offense as well for Baylor, still predicated in terms of the rushing attack, averaging 234 on the ground. They like to run it out of multiple back sets. It's not the same offense in terms of with Bohannon at the helm in terms of the RPO game. They like to run it in terms of a fullback type of set, more importantly, a tailback U, where they like to run off edge and off tackle as well. That goes right into the front 7 of Iowa State. Iowa State has only given up around 60 rushing yards per game. Matt Campbell is a very good underdog head coach catching points, but I think it comes down to 2 factors. Which quarterback do you believe in more, Hunter Deckers at home or Blake Shapen on the road? Shapen struggled, in my opinion, on the road in Provo a couple of weeks ago. goes on the road into a very difficult environment in terms of Ames, Iowa. They always step up against Big 12 competition, but Xavier Hutchinson, to me, could be the X factor. I think he's the best offensive playmaker on the field, 28 receptions, over 300 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He could be the difference maker, challenging Baylor's defense over the top. I think they're able to run it with Jarrell Brock, work off of play action, and I do feel Iowa State strikes the upset over Baylor in a very close ball game. I think they win maybe 28-24 in Ames this coming Saturday. Another battle taking place in the SEC. We have Anthony Richardson going on the road to face Hendon Hooker. Florida struggled last week as a 25.5-point favorite over USF. Was it a potential look ahead, or was it the fact that they're still trying to get acclimated to Billy Napier's offensive scheme? Anthony Richardson has looked good on the ground, has not looked good through the air. He's only completing around 52% of his passes, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Now, from the series perspective, this series has been dominated by the Florida Gators. They've won 16 of the last 17. They've won 5 straight over the Tennessee Volunteers by an average margin of victory of 19.8 points per game. Picked up this victory last year, 38-14 in the Swamp. But it's a tale of two teams. Obviously, Florida struggled against USF, struggled against Kentucky, and is struggling to pass the football. On the flip side, you have an offense led by Hendon Hooker that is playing unbelievable, averaging over 50 points per game. They're pounding the rock between the tackles, averaging around $160 on the ground and throwing for over 300 through the air. I think that's the matchup to keep an eye out on going up against Florida. Florida is very good in the secondary right now, only giving up around 181 passing yards to opposing offenses, $181, 190 in that area, and they could potentially force Hendon Hooker to methodically work down the field. On the flip side, Florida's still averaging 212 rushing yards on the ground compared to Tennessee, giving up only 83 yards to opposing offenses. But they haven't faced a mobile quarterback up until this point. Keaton Slovis was prototypical. Ball State, in terms of their offensive attack with Paddock, they were one-dimensional. So now for the first time, they're going to face a mobile quarterback in terms of Anthony Richardson. And to me, that's the difference. I think he could put pressure on the Tennessee defense on the perimeter. Catching 11 points for a team that's won 16 of the last 17, has won 5 straight by 19.8 points per game. I think it's going to be a close ball game from start to finish. I think Florida, in the end, is within striking distance. Tennessee might win, but Florida definitely covers, in my opinion, the 11-point number Saturday afternoon in Knoxville. This is the highest line, too, that Tennessee's been favored in a very long time, so keep an eye out for that. Hendon Hooker playing lights out, but Anthony Richardson and the crew catching 11 points, I think, are within striking distance. Another ball game takes place in Cincinnati. We have Cincinnati laying a huge number against Indiana. I was on Indiana last week laying 6.5. They started slow, never had the lead in the second half until overtime. Actually, they tied it up at 30 apiece. Had multiple opportunities in the first half, could not convert on critical third downs, turnovers, and just allowing Austin Reed and that Western Kentucky offense to sustain drives and put pressure on their offense to play from behind. They did not look good in that matchup. Now they go on the road to face Cincinnati. Cincinnati has looked very well since that week 1 loss to Arkansas. They're pounding the rock between the tackles for about 160 yards on the ground, only giving up about 150 passing yards to opposing offenses. They have the quarterback, Ben Bryant. He's completed around 73% of his passes. This is a Cincinnati team that trailed Miami of Ohio 17-7 before routing the Redhawks 34-17. They have now won 16 straight over Miami O in that series. They now come back home. This was a game that they trailed in the first half last year, pulled away in the second half, and routed Indiana in that ballgame in Bloomington. But I still feel that Connor Bazelak can challenge that defense over the top. Even though they played very well in the first half against KJ Jefferson week number 1, I like the speed of Indiana on the perimeter. I like Sean Shivers and the rushing attack. I know Indiana's only given up rushing for 130 yards on the ground, but I like the speed in terms of the passing game to challenge Cincinnati over the top. That could open up running lanes in this ball game. Look for Cincinnati to run on the front seven, just the way Western Kentucky did. Indiana giving up $180 on the ground. I think they're well within this number from start to finish. They're going on the road. Cincinnati plays very well at home, but I don't think the Bearcats cover this 17.5-point number. Give me the Big Ten team catching points on the road. I think they're within striking distance in the fourth quarter. Another matchup takes place in North Carolina. We have Notre Dame picking up their first win under Marcus Freeman. Last week it wasn't easy, but they get the win. They get the cover over California. They trailed in the first half before pulling away and scoring with about a minute left. This is an offense in Notre Dame right now that's only averaging 117 rushing yards per game. Think about that for a second. They were up in the area of about 170 last year. The MO under Brian Kelly was a physical offensive line, wear opposing teams down at the point of attack and work off of play action. They have not been able to run the football consistently. That has put them into long, predictable third down situations, has put pressure on obviously the former quarterback Buckner and now Drew Prine in terms of his experience, especially in that matchup against California. But they're going up against a smaller defensive front in North Carolina. North Carolina entering this matchup is giving up 193 rushing yards to opposing offenses. They're coming out of a bye. Now, you could look at this two ways. You could look at it as having extra weeks of preparation and extra days of preparation for Matt Brown, or you could look at it as a detriment. This is a North Carolina offense that's averaging over 48 points per game, over 300 yards passing per game, and they have a young quarterback in May that's taken over for Sam Howell. This is week number 4, and they have a bye already. To me, that's a detriment that could disrupt the quarterback to wide receiver relationship. I don't like that factor. They can come out of this game a little slow. When you look at the series perspective, Notre Dame has won 4 straight in the series. They won the last 2 by an average margin of victory of 12 points per game. They won this victory last year, 44-34. Give me the more physical team in terms of Notre Dame. Offensive line, defensive line, I think is the difference. I don't think Pine has to do a lot. I think they're able to run at will on the front seven of North Carolina. They wear them down as this game progresses, and I think they pick up a very critical road win under Marcus Freeman. I think it could be double digits as well, especially in the second half. I think they're able to get chunk plays, and I'm not so sure May is able to exploit the secondary of the Irish in this matchup. So those are the selections for week 4. Like I said, I'll be on air all week along with college football today. So we'll see you on Saturday. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy the games.